Good afternoon. This is discussion board 4 for analysis, assessment, and evaluation at American Intercontinental University. Over the course of the years, I've taken many assessments, either while in college or, doing workplace compliance tests, certifications. Over the years, I've taken certifications not only through my job, not only through school, but if there's been times that I wanted to help my child, being that he was a special needs child. So there was certain certifications that me, being a parent, took in order to learn and able to help him learn. So I've had experience with taking many assessments, many tests over the course of my life. So those experiences have shaped a clear list of do's and don'ts for effective test writing, especially when the goal is to measure real learning rather than memorization. And this is some things, I'm not a special ed teacher. I at one time dreamt of being a special needs teacher, but these are some of the things certain kids learn differently. So some kids may be able to memorize whatever information the teacher is teaching. They may be able to memorize the book, but the comprehension side of it is different. So sometimes it's hard for parents to understand, why is my child struggling when I know they can tell me what chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3 verbatim says, but being able to comprehend and express the idea in your own words, sometimes students struggle with that. And even not just students, not just younger learners, adults in the workplace also struggle. So these were some of the things that I also struggle with, taking tests verbally or doing hands-on tests. Sometimes I struggle with, being able to read the information and also relay it back, by taking a test where you made 80 or 90 in order to go ahead and move to the next level. So the positive and negative testing experiences, some of the things I want to talk about. One of my most positive testing experience was a performance-based assessment during a workplace training. I've been on my job for 20 plus years. So at the time, this assessment did not really rely on taking a test and passing the test. This assessment was based solely on the hands-on learning experience that we, receive over the course of 30 days. Being able to properly set up the machine, being able to make the parts, make a quality part in a safe manner. Those were some of the things that we were graded on during that time frame. And I absolutely enjoyed that because it did not detail sitting in the class, sitting in a room somewhere, taking a test, even though the knowledge is here, being able to pick the correct answer, picking A, B, C, or D. It did not mean that the students didn't get their information in, because everybody learns different. So that was one of my most positive experiences that I can think of in my mind. So at the time, I operated a machine that required me to know how to install the tools properly, while also ensuring that all safety measures were used during that time. I'm sure if this was a written assessment, like I spoke about earlier, I may have failed. The training that was provided was a hands-on. The trainer was very clear, and he made it known at the time that if we were not able to matriculate through, installing the correct tool in the machine, being able to make the parts in a safe manner with no prompts, we will probably not pass. So that took away the guessing game, and it made it clear for the 4 or 5 people that were in that training. Like, this is the expectation of this training. It was not a guessing game, and we did not have to really guess. At the end of the day, were we going to head off to a classroom and take a handwritten test? He told us up front what was expected of us. So I left the training that particular day with a certificate, and I felt so confident that I was able to learn and grow within the organization. On the other hand, one of the worst experiences involved a multiple choice exam, and it had many what I believe trick questions. And it was also a room full of people that I barely knew. So my organization is global. During this particular training, it were people from different states. So these were people that I did not know, did not meet until that Monday morning. So in order to move from session to session, you had to pass every session. So on the second day, I was doing good the first day. On the second day, I failed, and I was kind of shocked to know what was going to happen next. And the instructor at the time said, you you failed, so you cannot move on. And it was sort of embarrassing that I spent a day and then I would have to go back and let my manager know at the time, hey, I'm out of this training because I did not pass. And it was not a test that, either I passed or I had to find on other employment. It would just been a enhancement to my resume. So at that time, I chose not to retake that class because at the time it was maybe $600 or $700 that the company invested in each student that participated. So I just chose not to kind of participate in trainings like that again after that particular negative experience. The impact for that particular session was frustration and clear a lack of trust in the assessment process. Even though the trainer at the time vaguely said, you guys, if you do not pass, you do not get a certificate. But we did not really understand after being in a class a day, or some people, class started at 8 o'clock. At 10 o'clock, when it's time for the next session, you notice that they were gone. So it was not really clearly explained what was the ramifications of not passing. Some of the other things I want to talk about is, challenging test writing techniques. So some authors who build training programs rely heavily on techniques that make assessments unnecessarily difficult rather than it being helpful to the learner or the student. So a few that stand out, that I can think of is overly complex or what we consider trick wording. And many times you see that in true false. If you don't read the question clearly and sit and read it again, you won't see the won't or the will or do or don't. So sometimes those questions can be perceived as being a trick question, which I necessarily don't like true or false questions in that manner, but I know that there's a reason behind it. Another thing that I could think of that I often see during my day-to-day tasks in my particular role that I'm in now is the use of acronyms. So as times are changing, I see a lot of acronyms. And even with me being in my career so long, many times I know what the acronyms are, but for someone that's new on a job, someone who's new taking a test, they may not necessarily know what the acronym stands for. So anytime that I'm actually building any type of training, I may use the acronym, but I will also clearly state what the acronym means and, spell the whole entire word out and include the definitions to it. Because some of these can also be tricky for a test taker, tricky for someone that's like new to an organization that's never been exposed to those type of acronyms. So another thing that I could think of is basically reading just to memorize and not reading to comprehend. So some of the trainings that I've taken over the course of the years, it's been trainings with 400 and 500 pages. So in those cases, in a short period of time, you are expected to really memorize and not really comprehend exactly what the sessions is about. Some of the distractors that are also similar, for a positive standpoint, it encourages careful thinking. So when you're building a training program, try to encourage the trainees. Another thing that I want to talk about is positive. So questions sometimes that lead to not giving the test takers the right answer, but alluding to the correct answer. Those are some of the positives as well. So some of the things that I also jot down with some of the trainings that I experienced over the years that I can probably give feedback now. how the technique should be improved. So now that I'm, back at AIU and I'm learning about, online learning, some of the feedback I would probably give to some of the past, not instructors, but some of the past people that have led training sessions at my job, I will tell them to use very clear, very direct language. I will also tell them to ensure only one answer is correct. Oftentimes you will have an A, B, C, and D choice, and you have A, which is correct, and then you have B, which has two of the correct answers. So those are some of the things that I will probably give feedback on. I will also not just build a class and say, hey, tomorrow the HR service department has to come through this training. Test these trainings out on a small group of people and try to understand and get the feedback, for what is good for the organization and what is not so good for the organization. That way you don't have to take do trainings for a whole group of people and realize, what, this is either too much information and not enough information, and have to spend more time developing another training. Also, some of the things I would give feedback to is to remove items that are basically unrelated to the skill set. Of course, with and I can only talk about production and working manufacturing. That's what I've been all my life. So if you are a machine operator, why would you need to know anything about driving a forklift? Unless it's just, hey, when you hear a forklift coming, you hear the horn blowing, you move out the way. Forklifts have the right of way. But outside of that, you shouldn't have to learn about the ins and outs of a forklift doing training to be a machine operator. And also some things that I would give is to maybe, give consistent. And when I say consistent, give consistent ways that you can score. Don't give a test on class A and have them take a test with 5 questions. And then you give that same exact test to another group of people and only have 2 questions. So remain consistent when you're developing courses, when you're administering courses. Try to be consistent. I hope I was able to, explain a little bit more about some of the things I experienced in training session and what I've also learned in a short period of time I've been back at AIU. Thank you.